So the pathway to that bird has my wings. First, to recognize and allow whatever's going on inside us when we're in reaction. Okay, here's what's going on. Recognize and allow it. Investigate what's really going on and bring nurturing. And then do the same for the other person. And I'll give you an example of this, of unreal othering from my own life. This is one that it was a very painful situation for me, and I actually needed help moving through it from someone else, as I'll explain. Because when we're in conflict, when we get into conflict, it's like a flash that somebody all of a sudden becomes the bad guy. And this is what happened to me. I was in a multiracial group some years back, and I had been openly sharing about how I needed to space out the meetings. I was hoping people would be willing to do it because I was going through a really bad period in terms of my health and fatigue and so on. And it was pretty vulnerable sharing. And so I shared that, and the next moment I was like shut down. I was hurt, angry, stunned at what I thought was this incredible insensitivity from one of my African-American friends, because she responded really angry at my request. She was really angry. She said she challenged my commitment to the group. And here I was feeling like I had been, open and vulnerable. And I've been involved with a number of mixed race groups, and one of them for like 2.5 years, and it was terribly important to me. Didn't she know? That kind of feeling. Okay, so Rain, here we are. This is the situation that I'm sharing with you. The first part of Rain is to recognize and allow inside myself the feelings of being hurt and angry, right? Recognize them, and then just let them be there. Allow means just let it be. Don't try to do something about it. Okay, I was hurt and angry. And then I investigated, and I felt betrayed. I felt like I had kind of exposed myself and been slammed. And the belief was, she doesn't understand, she doesn't care. Okay? And then I did the nurture. And as you know, many of you that have been with me, I often do nurture by hand on the heart. And I just brought kindness inside, kind of, it's okay, sweetheart, this belongs to, just brought a kind of a gentleness. And that created more space. As I describe it, after the rain, there's just more space, more beingness, okay? It was a familiar process. I knew how to be with myself. But when I tried to bring it to her and, really sense what was going on for her, I was really stuck. I just couldn't. So I was talking to a mutual friend who's a wise woman, and I told her how I could recognize and allow this friend of ours from the group, what was going on. I could recognize she was upset and allow it. But when I investigated, I couldn't get what was really under it. And I want to tell you what my friend said to me. She said, Tara, for you, it's about spreading out some meetings because of your health. These meetings are optional for you. For her, an African-American woman, these meetings feel like life or death. And in a moment, it really made sense. Because in a moment, I was thinking, oh, right, she has a grandson in jail. And then I was remembering something she had written that described how she felt like any of these African-American men in the streets who were targets of racial violence were her sons. I was remembering how she was living in continual fear for people's lives. Her body was. And that the meetings mattered to her. We were her Sangha, her community, that she was her allies, So my heart broke open. I mean, she was becoming more real. And then we met, as we did. And when we talked, it was really quite natural to listen to her sharing what she experienced and to genuinely care. And she'd done her work. She'd done Rain too, and she could be with me and say, she could get where I was coming from. There were some really key takeaways. We became real to each other. I'm mostly aware of, as she became real to me, just how important it was that I could see my white privilege, that my life didn't depend on these meetings, and that it blinded me. And I really needed to get in my bones more how she was living in fear. I really had to get that in my bones. And one of the big takeaways was we had to clash and hang in there to come out closer friends. What I'm meaning by that is that in each of the multiracial groups I was a part of, one of the deep intentions was to be able to wake up from that trance of unreal other, to be able to see both how our lives really were different, real difference, and also how this bird has my wings. And that's the gift that came from this one. I got to see that more. So the invitation for us all is to, out of our care, out of our heartbreak, when we see cruelty, is to act, but also in our own life sense, on whatever level it plays out and in our own lives. How are we creating an unreal other?